Welcome back. I'm Felix, and I saw this things kids won't experience, and arcades. There are still some arcades, especially in Japan, and I think China too is big on arcades. They have a lot of internet cafes now are big. So, at least in the are there a lot of internet cafes in the U.S.? Well, anyways, let's see what things they're talking about.
Throughout the years, there have been many different changes that have taken place all
Hold on, my sound sounds really low in my head. Oh, no wonder.
around us, and we may not even realize it until we look back years down the road. As we do that, we realize that there are sights, sounds, and experiences that kids will never know about. In this video, we will have a look back at some of the things that kids will never experience. Kids today will never experience telephones the way we used to. For starters, they were big and there was no way you were ever going to lose that thing. These phones had real bells inside, and if they were older, then they had rotary dials on them. Back then,
I love the videos where they show kids trying to use a rotary phone. It is hilarious. They have no clue what they're doing. Or even better yet, when they try to use the buttons on some of those phones, and because they dial first and they pick it up, and it's like, nope, you got to pick up and then dial. The rotary phone, you're supposed to go all the way to the metal thing there. That metal thing wasn't there. You could actually kind of keep going. So, but yeah, you're supposed to dial that way. But I love those videos. I should find the videos of those.
and there was no caller ID, and we happily answered each and every call without knowing who was on the other end. Most people did not have an answering machine until the late 80s or even 90s, so we didn't want to miss that call. These older phones were simply meant for calling someone, and there was no way to send a text or take a photo with them. Speaking of text, the only way that a text could be found was in a book. Any notes or letters of correspondence were generally handwritten. Today, that is definitely something from the past, as many students have never even learned how
Oh, is he going to talk about cursive? Because they had typewriters. Okay, maybe I jumped the gun.
to write in cursive. Even some
So was that about cursive writing? I'm confused on that one. Because back then you could type up your stuff. They had typewriters. And I used to be one of those people who think, oh, they don't teach cursive? Then I thought about it. It's not really necessary. We do most of our communication through digital media. And so we don't need to know how to write. We need to know how to write, but not necessarily in cursive. You can print. There's nothing wrong with printing. Just they don't really teach handwriting. Is what they really need to teach is how proper handwriting. Because some of these people's handwriting, even when they print, is atrocious. It is horrible. All right, vacuum cleaners. All right.
something as simple as a vacuum was completely different. They came with bags rather than canisters, which was much more of a hassle, and especially so if the bag ever exploded. What a mess.
The bags really could explode. That's not a joke. Basically, they could get over full and they would explode. Basically, how it worked is it would suck the stuff up to the bag. The bag would actually expand while the stuff was blowing up in it. So it was, if it was packed full and it kept, there's no place for the air to go, it would literally just poof. And you could actually, when they're that full and you go take it off, it'll explode, like blow back out the hole. So, yeah, those were a lot of fun.
None of us could ever imagine the day when we would see a Roomba. Most all of us in Generation X and before understood how life was before the personal computer became so prominent. But once it did, we remember how it was a little bit more of a challenge than what it is today. Do you remember booting up a computer off of a floppy disk? Or how about using dial-up? Kids today would never have the patience to get through that, and even worse was downloading something.
Yeah, you just didn't bother downloading unless you really had to. Oh, he's way off on that. It wasn't minutes or hours. It could be days. Depending on what you were downloading, it could be hours or days. Yeah, it could take a day or two, depending on what you're downloading. That's not a joke. I don't recall ever downloading something that took a minute. I'll say at least 15 minutes.
Back then, Spam was just a product that could be found in a can. When we traveled in cars, we had to take turns picking the radio station for us all to listen to. Remember hearing the static between stations? We were lucky if we had an 8-track player or cassette tape player, but either way, we certainly did not have the luxury of our very own iPod or MP3 player to listen to.
Okay, I'm not sure where you're going with that because cars still have radios. You can get satellite radio. You can, plug digital devices into the radio now. Is he trying to say no 8-track? Because yeah, 8-tracks are gone, but the radio's still around. I'm so confused on that one.
Cars have come a long way over the years, and people today are spoiled. Many cars of yesteryear never had power locks or power windows. Some never even had an air conditioner or a radio. Without power...
On the radios, some radios didn't even have FM. You only had AM. Yeah, they only came with AM radio. FM was a luxury. Even as a kid, I thought that was weird. It wasn't until probably 80s that FM was standard on all cars. But yeah, FM radio was not standard. It was AM was standard. FM was a luxury.
Turning a car at a stop was virtually impossible. Brakes needed adjustment, and some of the valves on cars did too. But one feature that we all did have in cars was an ashtray and a working cigarette lighter. Those were the small luxuries that we all...
Oh, I remember cigarette lighters. I burnt myself on it. I don't know why, because when it comes out, it's glowing red hot. And it right off the bat, it doesn't feel hot till you get close to it. And then you find out it's really hot. It left circles. It's like coils wrapped up in there. And it was... I don't know why I touched it. And it was a thing back then. As a kid, you touched it. A lot of kids did.
Even if you did not smoke, the ashtray was an additional place where you could hold your coins, gum, or more. If we wanted to know how to spell something or know the meaning of a word, then we had to consult a dictionary. We certainly couldn't Google it like we can now.
Help me!
Hey, stop it!
Oh no!
Libraries were places to get books rather than a place to use the internet. And remember when you had to use the card catalog? Yeah.
Yeah, we had to learn the Dewey Decimal System. I don't know if they still teach that, but yeah, that was a little fun. Now most libraries have digital interface. You can just type in the book you're looking for and tell you where it's at.
Kids today will never know that hassle. Cash and coins were the preferred way of spending money back in the day. Yes, we used checks, and we also had the option of credit cards, but we definitely did not have debit cards. Credit cards were not electronically ran back then.
Actually, I believe debit cards were coming out back then. They just weren't as widely available.
They ran through a credit card slide or imprinter, which would use carbon paper to make the copies that you would sign. Over the years, some candy bars have disappeared, and those that have stuck around have also changed. Remember when Hershey bars came in foil wrappers with the paper that went around them? You could easily slide your finger down the back just to open it. For most of us, this will always be known as Kentucky Fried Chicken and not KFC.
Did you know if you ask most people what does KFC stand for, they have no clue. And I thought that was interesting. They thought it was just KFC. It's like, no, it actually stands for something.
It's almost like they are trying to be too fancy without getting fancier. Have you ever asked a kid what a slide rule was? Try it sometime, and I promise you'll enjoy the confused look on their face. But for us, it was a necessity unless it was test time. Then you were not allowed to use that or a calculator. Learning your times tables was an essential way to make math easier.
I was actually shocked that they don't teach the times table. That's how I learned the time, how to do multiplication. It's the easiest way to learn. So I'll be honest with you, I was shocked when they stopped teaching that.
No matter who you were, you always had a map or an atlas with you in your car. This was especially true if you were traveling on a trip.
I hated maps. I knew how to read them, but I hated them. Oh my God, they were horrible. They would be so huge. It's like, it got to the point I used to travel a lot. I bought a map book of the area I used to travel around in. And if I could figure out where I was good to go. But sometimes I couldn't. I was just like, let me find the interstate.
Getting lost was real, and occasionally you'd have to stop and ask for directions. Now that everyone has GPS on their phones, they'll have no idea what that entailed. If you were into sports and you wanted to stay up to date with the latest highlights, then you tuned into the nightly news to catch the 5-minute sports segment. No one wanted to wait for the paper to come out the next day, and we certainly could not look it up on our phones like we can now. If you were into watching movies at the theater, then having a newspaper was useful. They had sections that would tell you everything that would be playing at your local movie theater or drive-in.
And you could call the theater. Some of them had like automated answer machines. You'd call and it'd tell you what time the movies were going to be playing.
Later on, we got a little spoiled when we could call in and listen to a recorded message listing the playtimes. If you missed the showtime or came in on the call late, then you would have to wait and listen to all the movies and showtimes to roll back around. Once the VCRs came on strong in the 1980s, the video rental stores became a huge part of our lives. We all traveled down to these on Friday and Saturday nights to look for the latest and greatest movies to watch. Loading film into a camera was somewhat of a skill to have, and especially so if you wanted to maximize the number of photos you could take. Some cameras, such as the 110, disc, or APS, made that process a little easier. But one thing that they did not simplify was the fact that you needed to have your film developed. That process may have taken 2 weeks, but later on we all got spoiled with the 1-hour processing. The only possible way that we could instantly see our photos was with the Polaroid camera. Even that wasn't as instant as digital cameras and cell phones are today. Talk about spoiled.
Yeah, with Polaroid cameras, they made it seem like if you shook it, it would develop fast. They actually had no effect. I found that out later. It's like, everyone shakes it, but there's no reason to shake it because it doesn't speed it up. You just have to let it sit there and develop on its own. And I was just thinking, I don't know any place I can take to get film developed. I don't think Walgreens does it, or CVS, or any of those places.
Remember how shopping used to be? It was only available during the day, Monday through Saturday. If it was after closing time, then it was going to have to wait until the next day. Getting gas was the same way, and so was banking. When the ATM card hit the market, we all thought it was the greatest thing ever. You mean I can do a little banking business after hours?
Shopping? I don't remember too many stores being closed on Sunday when I was a kid.
Most people who use computers today will never understand having to use DOS or hear the scream of a dot matrix printer. Wi-Fi has pretty well killed the need for wires being hooked up to a computer other than for a charge cord. Something else that kids will never experience is how and where video games are played. Most are played on phones or on video game consoles at home. But there was a time when kids spent all of their extra money in the arcades at the mall or in some pizza place. They will never understand why kids would place their quarters on the console as they watch someone play the game. Time is a funny thing. It passes by and we never really notice it until it's years later. At that point, we realize that there are many things that have changed and will never be the same. What are some...
So, yeah, those are things that I can see kids never experience again. The radio one I was confused on because, like I said, the radio's still around. And if you're listening to XM, or if the kids don't want to have their earbuds in anymore, or a song comes on they want to hear. But otherwise, yeah. That's why I said I was confused with some of those, what he was meaning. Like, especially the writing thing is like, well, they had typewriters. You could have typed it up. But, oh, well. That was interesting. All right, everyone. Take care.